back. James Harden right on target. Bang, bang, George Niang to Paul Reed from Tyrese Maxey.
Joel Embiid.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap Podcast. We are deep into September, and the first day of Media Day is upon us in the NBA season. We are dangerously close to basketball, Sixers basketball specifically. It's me and Sean Bernard as usual. Sean, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. You know, the offseason is over. Basketball is coming. We dropped Pick Swap merch today. It's a terrific day in the world. So, I don't know. I'm happy for things to actually be happening, stuff to talk about, write about in a more concrete sense rather than just pulling stuff out of whatever I can make out of. So, I was happy to at least see everybody in the building, see the vibes kind of returning. Everything was pretty positive today. I thought everybody came off pretty well. The vibes were good. So, it was cool. I'm happy things are coming back.
Yeah, it's a weird full circle moment with the way that last season started and the absolute train wreck that was the last preseason with the Sixers and you know everything that happened there. And Joel even kind of jokingly avoided
Yeah.
those questions today. We're gonna have a lot to talk about in terms of Joel and Harden and all the things that have followed there. I guess where do you even want to start with this? Because there's they kind of went through player by player, a lot of
Mhm.
Harden, a lot of Embiid stuff. Where do you want to start? The top? You want to start with Doc Rivers, Daryl Morey?
Yeah, we'll start right at the top with Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers. I mean, first off, no questions on the Doc Rivers Twitter gate. Slightly disappointed by that, but no surprises there. It was definitely a pretty formal. I would say like they seemed a little bit more uptight and focused this year than I think that they were in years past. I think that like Morey and Rivers, like specifically, I mean this more so for Morey and Rivers than the players in general, but it felt like there was a little bit more like seriousness of them taking on, which is a positive thing. Morey obviously shot down the tampering investigation stuff, which I think was an important part. There was a pretty general consensus across the entire team. Like even when Montrezl Harrell was asked about like James Harden texting him if he had contact with him this offseason, and
Yeah.
he's like, no, like that sounds like tampering to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Same with PJ Tucker, kind of. So like, there
Yeah.
definitely was a team wide kind of focus on making sure because that investigation is obviously still ongoing, and I thought it was some good things from both. I thought it was cool to see Morey kind of open up on a little bit on his decision making. Cool that he talked about like having his team of people around him involved, which I think is not always the case with a lot of GMs. And I don't know. I thought it was pretty stick to the script today, but it was good to hear from him and hear him elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, they do definitely have the playbook for first day media day, and I'm sure that they stuck pretty closely to it. So, they're keeping their cards close to their chest as they should. But I think in a situation like this, Daryl Morey had a lot to like openly talk on in a way that I think was very positive. I know they mentioned talking about bringing all the Houston guys back, and he was like, "Me and Doc have been in this league for a long time. Like, obviously, you're going to end up working with guys that you previously had worked with." I don't know if that's necessarily the truth. Maybe some of that kind of bleeds in, but I'm sure Daryl Morey had there's a reason the guys that are here are here. So, but it was, nice to hear them talk. Obviously, Doc kind of avoided some of the things, but I think the most important thing that he mentioned today was like, this is the most talented team top to bottom
Yeah.
that he's had here. Definitely here. So, obviously he seems excited and a little bit more, like a little bit more upbeat from Doc. Maybe it's the early part of the season and he's not
Yeah.
pissed off at anyone yet, but it felt like he was a little bit more spry today, I think is a good way to put it.
Yeah, he kind of talked about when he went on one of the podcasts this summer and talked about he had back surgery this summer and how his like schedule was a little different. Like instead of him like taking time off to start the summer, because he was like underneath back surgery and kind of
Yeah.
like stuck with that. He did a lot of his like prep work early on this year. He said like a lot of his game planning, a lot of his things. So maybe he's got a little rejuvenated energy from like taking like the second half of the summer to have his relax and golf and do whatever Doc Rivers does on a casual Sunday. So who knows? Maybe that's a good thing. I do think the talented, it being the most talented team was a noteworthy quote. And I even felt that like watching the interviews, like it felt like in years past, like you get to like the section of the roster where it's like the Charles Bassies, the Jaden Springers, the guys that like you like but don't necessarily like expect to play a role. It felt like way less of this year when you just go down and it's Montrezl Harrell to Danuel House to just all these guys, D'Anthony Melton. We'll get to all these real quick, but like it just felt like this team is focused, this team is here, and I think that like now that we're 3 years in, Doc Rivers also talked about how it's like the most normal season they're actually gonna have. It feels like the pieces are finally in place, and there's like a set culture kind of established now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as much as we do give Doc Rivers grief, and not that he's off the hook by any means, but it's true. Like, think about their
Yeah.
first year here, riddled with weird things that are happening, COVID, everything that, went through these last 2 seasons, and obviously last year with the Simmons drama and not having him and maybe having him, then kicking him out and doing all the things that happened. Like, this is the first time where it feels like they have what they need. It's in-house. They don't have to go anywhere looking for anything, and they can control what they can control, and the guys that are there are ready to go. And it seemed like, again, obviously we're gonna talk basically guy by guy or group by group, maybe, but it seems like everyone kind of has the same focus. And I know that they're going to go down to Charleston, South Carolina at some point soon to do their training camp. I think that's a really good thing.
Mhm.
But there's like a lot of just the way that they talked about Harden and the way they talked about some of these other guys, like having to kick Maxey and Paul Reed out of the gym a handful of times, like
Mhm.
all those type of things, I think lead to a really positive culture. And I'm super excited that like, Doc doesn't really get excited like that, and he doesn't really ever seem like he's excitable or enjoying what he's doing, as weird as that sounds, but it seems like he's in a position where, maybe he feels a new energy, and that, you know, type of drive for him, obviously it's day one, media day, it'd be pretty bad if he wasn't excited, but,
Yeah.
that drive, if that continues, if that type of energy continues, I think that's a really good sign for him as well.
Yeah, definitely. And let's move on to a couple of the players. I guess we'll start right at the top with Joel Embiid and James Harden. First off, I think it's awesome that they have those two paired up together doing it. And I do think like they naturally had like more of a free flowing, just like playing off
Yeah,
each other more than we ever saw
yeah,
with the Joel Embiid Ben Simmons relationship, which I think is cool. Harden is interesting. Like he has so much of like that star factor to him. Like even with Embiid, like Embiid's obviously a legitimate NBA superstar, but Harden just like has that like allure to where like
yeah,
he kind of twists things. He's got that vibe around him that impresses me. I noticed it when he was at the Eagles game, just the way people like interact with him, look at him, just what a like legitimate
yeah.
superstar he is. But I thought we saw Harden open up a little bit today, be a little more natural. He joked that he lost 100 pounds, which that was cool too. Said 100 pounds, tweet that out. So I felt like he felt more like himself. He also opened up, talked about how he was in like kind of a dark place when he struggled when he wasn't able to do what he's traditionally used to doing on the court and how hard that is for him, which I think was an important point to bring up too, and cool that he was open about it. He also spoke and said like his goals are purely to win as many championships as he can, and said he's looking at everything on a year by year basis, which I think is important considering like the looming investigation and how they're looking in the back end deal and all that. So I think that was probably scripted too and instructed to say that, and I think it was a good reply. But overall, I was encouraged by everything I heard from Harden, and I do buy into a lot of the offseason.
I don't even want to say I bought into a little bit of it. I'm fully bought in. Um, he looks the part right now, man. He looks thin and strong,
Yeah.
and just like lean, very much like an old version of himself. We haven't seen him, I think, this in shape, like this toned. Like I'm not. I don't want to end up going on here just talking about James Harden's body this entire time, but seriously, like he looks like he's in a really good spot. The way he was communicating and interacting, obviously, like losing 100 pounds, hilarious. One of my friends even texted me today, was like, "Is that real?" And I was like, "No,
Yeah.
he didn't lose
No,
100 pounds. He'd be
he's
like
sitting there.
he'd be
Yeah.
110 pounds if he lost 100 pounds. He's not that
Yeah.
big."
Yeah.
Um, but like just funny stuff from him and Joel joking back and forth, and just hearing what they have to say, and they're just both so focused. I think, obviously they're joking and having a laugh here and there, but I think they both seem very focused on what they need to do this season on both sides of the ball, and obviously we'll talk about that with Joel. But with Harden, man, I can't wait to see him play basketball again. I feel like we're going to get a really different version of what we saw from him last year.
Yeah, definitely. And Joel joking, saying how he just sat on his couch all summer and didn't do anything. And there's definitely some truth to that just because he was recovering from his surgeries and had both hands tied up for it. But I've also heard the reports of him already working out with Drew Hanlon. I know Drew Hanlon's been to the Sixers facility, which Joel's his guy if he's there, I would assume, unless he's working with somebody else on the team, which I do hope is the case because I love Drew Hanlon and support the work.
Yeah,
So But as far as I know, Joel's the only Sixer that he works with on a regular basis, and so of him being at the facility as recently as 2 weeks ago, within the last
Yeah.
2 weeks, I definitely saw him there. So I don't believe Joel was just sitting on the couch all summer. I'm confident that he's added things to his game as he does every year. He also, kind of what you mentioned here, talked a lot about like the defensive side of the ball. And a cool question, when he was asked about his goals of MVP, he replied, quote, "Whatever happens, happens. That's something I'm not worried about at all. All I'm worried about is having the best team in the league. My focus this year is I really want us to be the best defensive team in the league," which I think that's a very cool mindset. He's spoken openly about wanting to be Defensive Player of the Year in the past. I think there's a chance he finds himself in the running for that this year.
I put a bet down today at lunch. Joel Embiid, Defensive Player of the Year.
Wow, look at us.
So I'm already there. It's plus 2,100. So go grab that while you can. Because to start this year, I feel like locked in Joel. I feel like half-assed Joel is one of the best defensive bigs in the league.
Mhm.
Fully bought in and like working his ass off defensively, Joel Embiid is miles ahead of many other guys. Obviously, Rudy Gobert is the guy that protects the rim as well, but Rudy Gobert cannot go to the perimeter and hang out there the way that Joel can. So I don't know, man. I think when you look at this team, obviously the starting five, good defensive prowess. If James Harden is locked in defensively and we can get a better version of him defensively, that'll help a lot. But then depth wise, basically everyone they're bringing off the bench is a solid defender, minus George Niang, Furkan, whatever. Like everyone else seems to be like a very good defender. Montrezl Harrell, I guess you can say, is not either. But they have a lot of good defensive players and a lot of guys that their best attribute is defense. When you're talking about Melton, Thybulle, PJ Tucker, so like there's a lot. And Tobias Harris is going to be a good defender as well. So I think that's not out of the realm of possibility for them to be the best defensive team in the league. And like we've seen in years past, like Boston, fantastic defensive team this past year. It's what got them to where they are. Uh, Golden State, always a great defensive team. Just going down the line and looking at the teams that have been successful, Milwaukee, Giannis, Defensive Player of the Year. Like those type of teams, regardless, go far in the playoffs because you have something to hang your hat on night in and night out. And I think if that's something that they're focused on, they're able to commit to, they'll end up being a really good team because it's something that they can control.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point about Embiid, like he obviously is relied on so heavily on both sides of the court. He was second in the NBA in usage rate last year, only behind Luka Doncic. If there's like a little bit taken off his plate on an offensive aspect, that will allow him to just be himself defensively. Like we've seen just the plays that he kind of takes off in like the first and second quarter and kind of
Yeah.
sleepwalking through that. And that I really like compliment him on it, to be honest, to find a way to like make sure that you have your legs for a full 48 minutes because just how much he's relied on both sides of the floor. So I think like with all the talent that we've added and Maxey, we expect another leap this year. James Harden, him getting back is going to be able to do more offensively. Like that opens the door for Embiid to just be able to be a force defensively. And if that's what his priorities are, which is what he's publicly saying right now, I think that really has a chance to be special. And like I could see that being the case. So I'm excited by that. I also love the mindset that he kind of has of like being over the individual awards a little bit. And who knows how much is true versus public. He definitely has gotten the short end of the stick these past 2 years, especially last year. So I do feel bad for him. And I think it's a better mindset to not be worried about them, considering like he's answered all the questions that they've asked him, done everything that he's been challenged to do, and still hasn't come away with anything. So it's really a bummer that he's all NBA second team is 2 years in a row is all he got to show for those past 2 seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know we've had this discussion many times, and obviously we think Joel deserved a trophy, at least one. So I'm sure it pisses him off maybe a little bit more than he lets on. But if he wants to go for the Defensive Player of the Year, I think it's his to take. I think it's one of those things where that's where he's going to hang his hat, like you said. If and he even mentioned it a little bit as well. Like he said, how much his team has relied on me offensively. Like if I can go out and kind of split that a little bit more evenly from on both sides of the ball rather than only giving that 100% or, there's definitely time. I mean, he makes incredible, like unbelievable defensive plays. You look back
Yeah.
at last year, think about, obviously the DeMar DeRozan block, but I think even more of the Darius Baisley block that
Mhm.
he had early last year. Like who does that? Who makes that play? Not many people. Not many people of his stature chase down blocks. All the things that he does, incredible. And I think it goes very underrated. Like I actually had an argument today with a coworker. Like it's like he's not that good of a defender. I was like,
Yeah.
whoa. We gotta rewind.
Yeah.
Because that's just wrong. That's not even an opinion. That's just bad. Uh So I was like, let me just pull up the stats here, man. I was like, second team all defense, 3 years, 3 different times. Like, yeah, no, Joel Embiid's there. I think he has a chance to do that. Obviously, he can do whatever he wants. So I think if he puts his mind to a DPOY, I think it's his to take.
Yeah, definitely. And he also gave props to Harden when talking about the addition, saying how none of this would be possible without him, which I thought was cool. And to swing it to another all defensive second team member, we got Matisse Thybulle in the building. Very cool. I did not realize him and D'Anthony Melton had any kind of tie. So it was
Yeah.
cool to see them joking with each other. Thybulle had his media moment first and joked that, like, when you talk to D'Anthony Melton, he's going to be saying how I took the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year award away from him and stole that, but I think I earned it. And then Melton hopped on and was asked that question. Matisse popped on frame and they're just kind of going back and forth. So cool to like see some sort of relationship there already. They both kind of very openly talked about like being excited about playing with each other. Talked about like their wingspans, their everything that they do, their activity. I wrote an article this week. They ranked 1 and 2 in the NBA in steal percentage last year, which there's some cool stuff that can be done there. And Matisse really was one of the darlings of today, with people just talking about his work ethic. Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey acknowledged it several times about how often he was in the gym. So a good day for Matisse stock.
Yeah, great day for Matisse stock. And, man, I was thinking about it a lot the last couple of days because the Philly Inquirer article, I think it was Pompey,
Yeah.
came out, and it was talking about how he was just in the lab all summer and spent a lot of time working on a bunch of different things. Obviously, Doc and Morey both alluded to that today as well. I don't know, man. I'm okay, more than okay. I'm very happy if he's back and he's part of this rotation. I think, again, when you're talking about what this team needs and is able to do, and the way that he could be used, and having the time to work alongside James Harden, and find a way to be productive in that way, while also, obviously taking the time. You and I have mentioned this year after year of just get in the gym and shoot a million times.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what he said he did. Like, he was like, yeah, I was just shooting all the time, doing that every single day, ball handling in the open court. And then just like learning how to be a more productive offensive piece. And I think if he's able to do that even a little bit, and I know we've said it before, but this is the first time of really hearing of him just like being locked in for a summer. So I think it's great for him. I think him being a good player and a productive player on this team changes a lot for what this team is able to do. And like, I know that they're talked about, that they're not going to discuss the contract situation with him publicly, which is fine with me.
Yeah.
Whatever they got to do, they got to do, which is fine. So I think it's good for now. I'm very excited for Matisse and obviously D'Anthony Melton as well. So having two guys that do something so well, thinking about, and we kind of look back at the zone the Sixers were able to play a bit last year that was like almost quarterbacked by Matisse because of how well he knows how to do it.
Mhm.
Throwing him and D'Anthony Melton at the top of a zone with Joel Embiid as an anchor, ooh man,
Yeah.
ooh man, that's a
Yeah.
nightmare for teams. And I think it gives them, like we talked about this all the time, versatility both on both ends of the floor. I think that could be huge for them. So I'm super excited for both of them.
Yeah, definitely. And to take a little bit first off, like in that article by Pompey, he mentioned that Matisse worked on his ball handling and finishing around the rim with DeMar DeRozan, and he also worked with Dame Lillard and Phil Beckton, who's an NBA
Yeah,
shooting coach, on his shooting. And one of the things Matisse talked about is they're trying to just cut out unnecessary motion in it. They did some form work, they broke it down, and that's all terrific to hear. That's like
great.
exactly what you would want to hear. And like in reality, this is a fairly make or break season for Matisse Thybulle, like Sixers aspect of it aside. Like we're talking about, he's now 25 years old. This is his 4th season in the NBA. If he has a very good year this season, takes a step forward, he can really be looked at. He will be looked at around the NBA as a guy that like is a starting caliber player who fits like what you need. If he does not, and if he takes somewhat of a stride back or does not like continue progressing, like he's probably written off as like a bench guy, change up, like reverse 6-man role for the rest of his career. So there needs to be those signs of progress. I never agree with the aspect of, and Matisse talked about it today, Keith Pompey's talked about it, both Doc and Daryl talked about how he hasn't had the chance like in past off seasons to work, which to me is just nonsense. Like when he was at the Olympics, I get it. Like he had to do that. You're still playing basketball. You still have time to work on your stuff if you want to work on it. And same with COVID. Like I get it. The world was shut down for sure. But it's like all you need is a hoop and a basketball. Like to me, like I think they
Yeah.
give too much leniency with that. But at the same time, he did have a full offseason this year, and it sounds like he took advantage of it. So strides forward would be huge.
Yeah, and I mean to know that he took the opportunity this year, and I think we've talked about it in the past where it's like he almost seems he's almost too cute, right? Like he's almost too friendly. And it seems like he's almost just riding the wave that is the NBA, where it's like you got to take this shit seriously. And it seems like he kind of put his foot in the ground and decided to make this offseason a really important one. And if he comes back even slightly improved on the offensive end and even slightly more improved as a shooter and a floor spacer, the defense that he brings is so much more. It's easier to implement that and it's better for him to be in the lineup because he's not a liability on one end.
Mhm.
So I think I'm excited for him. Again, like I think him being good would add to this team even more than what they already have. I think they're okay with him being in or out of the rotation, but him being a guy that pushes for minutes and can play in that seventh or eighth man role, I think that changes a lot and it makes them a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. And another guy that I was absolutely thrilled to hear what he said about his role today was Tobias Harris. Uh,
Mhm.
could not could not have asked for more from what he said. He talked about how his focus is making quicker decisions, shooting 3-pointers. And Doc Rivers acknowledged at the beginning how he had talks with Tobias like throughout the season last year and how it started to click toward the tail end of the year, which it was evidence of that in his play. We saw the 3-point rate come up, we saw the percentage come up. And that's what Tobias is saying all that he worked on is making quick decisions. He talked about like he has no concerns playing next to PJ Tucker because it's pretty much the same role. He compared it to playing next to Danilo Gallinari in his time under Doc with the Clippers, and there's some parallels there too. Kind of obviously different caliber of players and stylistically, but somewhat similar roles in terms of a 3-point shooter, stretch four, that kind of thing. So I see value in that. And the quote that really stood out to me is he was just talking about like the importance of taking 3-pointers, and he just said like quote, I think it opens everything up for
Wow.
everyone. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you nailed it. That's what we're looking for. And I
Mhm.
could not be happier with Tobias.
Yeah, man. I love Tobias. I think this is all like going through Matisse and now going through Tobias are guys that a lot of people have looked at as being like they gotta go for this team to win a championship. Like they can't be on this team. I think those guys playing a certain role and being a certain way is what they've needed and settling into a role. And I think that's kind of what they're looking at right now. Tobias is going to be a really good player for this team. I
Mhm.
don't really care what anybody says at this point. Um, Having the mindset that he does, being the type of guy that he is, leadership wise, Doc talked about it constantly. Just a great leader. Last year into the year before, like all the turnover that this team has had over the last 3 seasons, the weirdest thing is that Tobias has been the constant. Like it's been him and Joel really as the constants
Yeah.
within this lineup. Obviously, you have Furkan and Matisse, but like when you're talking about starters, like these are the guys. He's adaptable and versatile, and if he's going to let it fly, like he said, he's a good shooter, and he's going to find a way to be productive in that sense. Defensively, if he can lock in on that end as well, you're looking at a really good team. So, like I said, I think Tobias is going to be great. He's not going to be putting up 20 but he doesn't need to. If he's giving you like realistically, if he's giving you 14, you're happy. Like, and that's not a lot to ask. And if he's doing that efficiently, like we know he can, I think you're going to be really happy. And if anyone's concerned about him, I think today was a really good sign for what he's going to bring to the team this season.
Yeah, and it's a testament to Tobias that he's still here because the Sixers needed him too badly to move on from him. Like when we look at these like bad contracts around the NBA, the Russell Westbrooks, the Buddy Hield, even like all their contracts teams are actively trying to get off and like willing to attach things to make it movable. That's never been the case with Tobias. It's been like we need something better than you if we're going to move on. And like the fact of the matter is there isn't that many. Like I get he may not be what some people hoped he would be. He's not a number 2 star, but we've never seen a player like a player's role change as much as Tobias has throughout his tenure here. It really is crazy. There's been times where he's been the number 2 option on this team. There's been times where he's a get touches regularly in the offense, a guy where he's simply a catch and shoot 3-and-D guy, which is essentially going to be his role this year. So I think Tobias deserves a ton of credit for riding that wave, sticking it out, and continuing to prove value to this team.
Absolutely. Fully agree. I'm a big fan of Tobias. Obviously as a person, he's been incredible here and is just like constantly doing incredible things within the community and being an ambassador for the team and the brand. So like I don't know. I don't know that there's enough good things to say about what Tobias is. I think he's had enough. I think the city and the fans have done enough of like ragging on him, where it's time to like kind of sort of recognize what he has done. And I
Definitely.
think this year's gonna be really good for him. For him, and if he's good, then we're good. So like I think that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, and to move on to the other forward, and one of the major talking points of today is PJ Tucker. First off, the day starts with a press release that he got orthoscopic knee surgery this offseason. Something that nobody knew. It happened 6 weeks ago. He's already cleared, already back on the court, but just a little minor touch up. They said the procedure took 10 minutes. Tucker had no concern for it, and Morey had no concern for it. He's already back on the court. He did make a joke about that. He said him and James were looking to join the Sixers 2 years ago, which was pretty cool, and I guess sucks a little bit looking now, but now they're here. So what were your thoughts on PJ Tucker and everything he said today?
Yeah, man, I love him. He's gonna be a fan favorite here. I mean, the stuff we already knew, we already kind of knew. But yeah, we love him. I think he's gonna be fantastic here. The sneakers are great and gonna be a constant talking point this season. Um, and yeah, I mean, could he have been here a year or two ago? Would that have been very nice? Yes. James Harden being able to be here a couple years ago would have been nice as well. But it's the way the cookie crumbles. So not gonna take that too seriously because they're here now, like you said. And I just think he's going to be such a fantastic addition. And a lot of guys talked about him today as like a really important guy on this team. So I think what you see is what you get with PJ Tucker, and what you see is really good player and a really good guy.
Yeah, he's going to be the most important 4 point per game scorer that we've seen maybe ever. Just like I don't expect statistical production in a major way. I was pouring through his stats today. It's like he played 29 minutes per game in the playoffs last year and averaged like 5 point something points. And I was like, and I still like look back at this series thinking like he was the second most important player on this
Yeah.
team. Like I will live on that take of that's what the eye test told me. And he is one of those guys. I also thought it was very cool. He talked a lot about toughness. That was another theme of today because obviously this is how they entered the offseason, was talking about needing that. And they asked PJ like to describe it and quantify it and talk about it. And he's like, he said like you really can't. And then he's like there's the guys that jump up and yell in your face and that they're not really tough. And he's like, to me, toughness is like showing up every night, being healthy, not backing down, and just like gave a nice answer. And then he talked about how mental toughness is more important than anything. So I thought it was very cool how he put that and like the mindset and the experience, and just he seems like a great like locker room addition.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's attitude. Like, 'cause toughness is an attitude. And I think a lot. I think again, I think there's a lot of guys that'll buy into that this year, and a lot of guys that are able to do that just haven't been, like had a leader like PJ Tucker. And again, it's vocal leadership like he's able to do, but it's active. It's him being an active leader, him leading by example in the way that he is going to go out every night and compete and fight. And when push does come to shove, he is going to have everyone's back, and he'll be the first one into a scuffle when it needs to happen. But that's a really important role to have on a team. It's something the Sixers have been like really strongly missing over the last few years. Like obviously, I know we talked about Mike Scott and things that he did, and Shake Milton talked about Mike Scott a bit recently, like last week, which is great and awesome. And we liked him while he was here, but he sucked. So like PJ Tucker is good and good at what he does, and is a really productive part of a team, and a guy that's like damn near 40 years old and is still getting $10 million a year to start on a basketball team.
Yeah.
So like and he could score 8 points per game and we would all be ecstatic. And I think that just points to what he is really good at, and what why people like him and why NBA teams are still willing to give him that money. There's a lot of reasons for it, and that's just one of them. So super excited about PJ.
Yeah, definitely. Welcome to Philadelphia, PJ. Excited to see it. The next guy I want to shift gears to is, of course, Tyrese Maxey. I mean, the guy just continues to like you just see like the personality, the confidence just growing in him.
Yeah.
Like he even when he was up there next to Bball Paul, they asked Bball Paul about the vertical, and Maxey jumps right in. They're like, "How much was the vertical?" And Maxey's like 2 inches, and just jumps. So funny there. But the quote that really got it for me today with Maxey was they asked him just about like the rise to becoming a Philadelphia fan favorite, reflected on some of the moments. And the quote here says, I think it's the work ethic. Everybody here that goes to games or I see around the town, they worked extremely hard for what they have. And then he followed that up with like saying how he came from the same mindset, took it through how when he was in 8th grade, he wrote all his goals down on a piece of paper, how it was go to Kentucky, go to the NBA, do all these things. And that he's followed that. And he's like, I didn't come from anything. Like, I don't take it for granted where I am. And just like what a delightful human being and he is. And it was very cool to see him just open up, and he really does just get Philly.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the man. He really
Yeah.
is the man. I really haven't seen. I don't think I've seen a guy take over the city like the way that Tyrese
So
has.
quick.
so quickly. People love him here, and for all the right reasons, and for all the best reasons you could possibly think of. But not only is he fantastic on the court, fantastic off the court, just a really, like you said, just a very good person and easy person to be around. It seems great teammate, and I think the biggest thing you're seeing right now is a confidence. Like all through last season, we really saw that build, and just personality wise growing, but like that type of confidence and kind of controlling a room the way he did during the press conferences and the way that he was interacting with like the stars, the number 1 and 2 players on this team, like he's right there and he knows that. So to see him carry himself that way, I think it is gonna translate to the court in a way that we started to see at the end of the last year, taking over games, and even when those guys are on the court, because we talked a lot about how when Joel Embiid was on the court, he would kind of be timid or pass the ball up and do all this stuff. Like he's grown past that leaps and bounds. So I can't imagine, like, it's only year 3, man. Like I keep kind of forgetting that it feels like he's been on this team forever. It feels like he's been in Philly forever. And it's just year 3. He's still a young kid, a lot to grow into. And I really can't wait to see what Tyrese does this year.
Yeah, and I absolutely buy his body change, like him growing into himself. He looks stronger. He does. I
Yep.
noticed at the rump when we were there, like
Yeah.
he's put on some muscle.
He's
He's
strong.
becoming a grown man, which is
Yeah.
awesome. So
Yeah.
that was great by Tyrese. Other than that, fairly quiet press conference from him. That was the only moment that super stuck out to me. I do want to talk about Furkan Korkmaz, talking about how he had nerve damage in his hands following last year's All-Star break, and from a guy who shot under 24% from three. I'm actually like
I
somewhat
buy it.
happy to hear that. Yeah, I do feel bad for Ferk. There were a couple jokes about the him improving his toughness, coming from Morey first. But I don't know. That was something that's been completely private that nobody's reported or mentioned, and I guess Furkan's been quiet about it. But yeah, he said he went through 2 months of rehab this offseason to fix it, and yeah, hopefully he's back.
He's back. No,
Yeah,
hopefully he's back. I believe it. I as much as like I'm really not expecting too much from Furkan this year, as much as I do like him and would like him to be a contributor to this team, I really don't expect him to do too much. But I root for Furkan very heavily. I think Furkan's a great dude from what everything we've seen, and just a good teammate and a good guy to be around. And if he is a shooter, right? Like he's a guy that has from the beginning been known as a bomber, a guy that just shoots the ball.
yeah,
So to see him shoot like 23.5% from 3 for a season, like, obviously, like, there's a really could be something wrong. Like, there really could have been something wrong with him, and if it's your hands and your fingertips and the way you're shooting the ball, like, it makes sense, right?
definitely.
Something did just seem off throughout the whole season. Not only did he, like, change roles 6 different times, he also was going through an injury, so, like, maybe coming in here, defined role, just a limited almost limiting his options is better, because Furkan is known to do too much. So keeping those touches at bay, and keeping him in order will be good for him. And I think if he comes out and is playing well, like again, another important aspect to a team is floor spacing and you know creating offense in that way. And I think he's able to do that if he's healthy. Like we saw a career Furkan year to like the career worst Furkan year. So I'm not surprised to hear there was something actually wrong.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by it. I hate that it happened. I hate to hear that, but glad he's improved, gotten better, and that's definitely something like that's not an excuse. That's a fair like correlation to him not playing well if there's nerve issues in his hands. So happy to hear that it's better. There's 2 more guys I want to talk about. Number one's Montrezl Harrell. First off, very cool that he got a call from Allen Iverson shortly after signing
Yeah,
with the Sixers. Talked a lot about like the shoes and stuff like that. Shout out Sixer sneakers, gonna have his hands full with
great year.
Montrezl Harrell and PJ Tucker this year. So yeah, crazy there, but very cool to see him get a call there. He also mentioned like that he was asked about like the little tussle with him and Embiid last year, and he said that they haven't acknowledged it, but like he went on to say how like that's what I want in a teammate is somebody that's not going to back down. Like that made me want to play with him more after, which I thought was cool. And overall, handled himself well, and I was happy with what I saw from Montrez.
I like him a lot, man. I really
Mhm.
do. I think he's gonna be like very good here. Again, another guy I think is gonna be a fan favorite for that reason that he'll
Definitely.
fight somebody. And he'll get kicked out of a game and we'll all love it. And like these things happen, right? These are all professionals. Embiid is a guy to get this is part of the reason we love Embiid, and it's part of the reason we love PJ Tucker, and it's part of the reason we're gonna love Montrezl Harrell as well. Like that's part of the game. Um, major part of the offseason was to get guys that are willing to do that. He's more than willing. And on top of that, he's going to be a fantastic offensive piece for this team. So, like, really liked him, really liked what I saw today. I think he seems like a very, like, also another good guy to be around and seems like a good locker room guy as well. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Can't complain about Montrez at all. I'm very excited for him also.
And a guy that just loves basketball, which to me, I love seeing. Like he
Yeah.
talks about how he took a week off after the season and then just dove into like 10 different leagues that he played in the Drew League. He just went through like a list of like live events, EBL circuit, all this stuff that he just like does and like basically doesn't stop playing basketball anymore. And like saying like this is my career, this is my job. I take it seriously. Like I'm blessed to be able to do this and like I'm working to get better at my craft every day, which I just love that mindset.
Yeah.
You can't ask for much more. So I've always been a Montrezl Harrell guy. I remember him back at Louisville, liking him then. He's turned out to be an even better player than I had hoped coming out of the draft. And personality wise, I'm starting to really genuinely like this guy. So I'm very excited to see him be a part of this Sixers team.
Yeah, me too. It's coming together that way. I think he was a good final piece.
Yeah, and the last guy that I wanted to bring up is Danuel House. Nothing too noteworthy from House. The thing that I did think was the coolest was the quotes about Harden. I'm pulling them up right now. When asked about like his relationship with James Harden, first off, he had all the right team answers. They were asking what his goal. He was just saying like whatever the team needs me to do, whatever with that. Actually, and I do want to talk about Bball Paul right after this, so one more. But
Okay.
the Danuel House, like talking about it, he talked about how he had a relationship with Harden's family, how like he's known this, that they didn't talk beforehand because they made it clear no tampering went down, which once again, respect for the Sixers for having their bases covered. And then the exact quote I'm looking at is Danuel House on James Harden, quote, "He's a selfless guy. On and off the court, he does a lot of great deeds that aren't talked about, and he doesn't want credit for them because he's all done from the heart. He's a good dude, a real good dude." And he said that he didn't play a role in coming to Philly, but that he's super thrilled to be playing with him again. Another just like seemingly like great fit as far as the team guy will fit in, does his role.
Love it. Yeah, he's one of those things that love it. I think Daniel House is going to be good. Like, he's just a guy, like we talked about it when we first signed him. Just gonna be good. He's just gonna be a guy that does his job. And I think that was highlighted today in what he said. And obviously talking about Harden as well. Like, there's a lot of really, like, I don't want to say heinous, but like pretty wretched things said about James Harden and the way that he's carried himself throughout the years. And like, it's seemingly the more you hear from guys that he's played with, that are just like very wrong about James Harden, like just really like false, just straight to the point, false. Period. Like, he seems like a great dude. You talk about Nick Claxton and Bruce
Mhm.
Brown and the guys that have loved him with the Nets. You go back to Danuel House, PJ Tucker, all these guys that are now coming back and playing with him, and Montrezl Harrell as well, and Joel Embiid saying this doesn't happen without James. Like, that is a huge deal and a really important thing, and something that I think is going underrated about him. Culture wise, being a great teammate is in his blood, and he's done a really great job here. I've seen and heard nothing but fantastic things about James Harden. So I will never say a bad word about James Harden in that sense, like, ever. And Daniel House is a testament to that. And as much as I love hearing, "Oh, I'll do whatever the team needs" and all that stuff, and I'm sure it's true, but like, he was out of the league for half the season last year. Like, I don't know if he has much of a choice.
Yeah,
Like, he's
sure.
got to do whatever the team needs him to do to keep a job. So, funny way to look at it. But I think he's gonna be good here as well. I'm excited for everyone here.
Yeah, just a fine guy to have at the bottom of your roster, like
Yep, very
worth
very
it.
good.
A better use of like a final like 13 through 15 slot than we've had in the past. So I'm happy with
Definitely,
Daniel.
definitely.
And B-Ball Paul, just to circle back to him a little, the thing that made the biggest impact on me is first off, he said he added 8 inches to his vertical, which didn't quite reach what he was targeting, but that's still that's a lot. That's a lot in all
Yeah,
season. And when he was asked about the Montrez signing and his thought process when that, he responded and said, quote, "My mentality stays the same. I'm still the same dude that's going to go out there and play extremely hard and keep working out what I need to get better at." That's
yeah.
exactly what you and hear again. And I get like some of this is like the media polish, like they're not going to be saying that they're pretty prepared for what they're going to say here. But
hmm
I heard all the right things from everybody today, and I'm happy to see B-Ball Paul have a positive outlook on things, and I do buy it from him.
Yeah, me too. I think he's that type of guy, really. And I think that this Tobias did touch on it a little bit. Training camp is going to be important. I think that the camaraderie, but also like the rivalry and the war that'll happen within within closed doors and during practices and during training camp is so important. And it's something we touched on a few weeks ago when they were kind of putting this team together, the final touches and everything, is that it's going to be a brutal training camp, but it's going to be the best thing for them. They'll come out better for it. And Bball Paul is one of those guys that is going to be facing, like, you think about it, he's going to be playing the mixture of a 4 and 5. So when you look at those players, it's now you're talking Harris and Tucker, you're talking Niang, you're talking Montrezl Harrell, you're talking obviously now Joel Embiid, Charles Bassey. Like, he's iron sharpens irons at this point, and what he's looking at is an incredibly competitive next few weeks leading up to the season, and he's going to be better for it. And I think that he's going to play a good role this season. And Montrezl Harrell obviously changes the role that he might play, but I think that his role is still going to be important in what he does and the versatility and the unique ability that he has. I think it's still going to be super important. So I'm glad to see he's coming in with a positive attitude.
Yeah, and even with Montrez here, there is still absolutely some sort of role for Bball Paul this year. Like,
Mhm.
he has earned that as much, and defensively, he's still our best option as a backup big after Joel Embiid. And I even would not mind him playing around next to Embiid, trying that if
Yeah.
especially if we're embracing this defensive identity. So don't count out Bball Paul. Still maybe took a step back into the mud, but he'll be out soon for sure.
He's going to be out. He's always going to get out.
Yeah, but yeah, overall, those were my biggest takeaways from the day. You have any other thoughts on it?
No, man, I think that this, like, just in general has been, like, was the most soothing, like, media day that they've had in a while, and fewest amount of question marks. So I think just going into the season, I think they're in a really good spot. And I personally haven't felt like just as at ease with this team and as confident what they are going to be going into the season as I am right now. So, like, I'm feeling great. And they'll kill my high at some point, but for now I'll choose to just stay there. I'm going to choose
Yeah.
to stay up high and enjoy this while it lasts.
Yeah, it's been the most normal off season that we've had in, like, a decade, so that
Yeah.
was a nice change. Now granted, like, they are gonna get hit with, like, a fat tampering punishment at the end of it,
Yeah,
so,
whatever.
we have that to wait on at least, I guess, but
Yeah. Who
yeah,
cares?
for the time being, like, happy to hear it. Glad to have everybody back in the building. Looks like everybody's minds are in the same place doing well, so, Sixers are returning the court soon. They start training
Soon,
camp
baby.
down in, the Citadel this week, so nice little team trip. We'll have more on the training camp and everything else going on next week. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out some Pick Swap merch that we got our link in our description here. And give us a follow on all the socials, and we will talk with you next time.